Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is Mojo, Dojo, Casa, White House. And of course, I was writing about the destruction of the East Wing of the White House. And that's a reference to the Barbie movie, if you don't know. The part where the Kens take over Barbie's dream house and turn it into the most sort of toxic masculinity version of a frat house you can imagine. And yeah. So it's hard to even know where to begin, really. I think, for a lot of people, the images of a wrecking ball to the East Wing, it just was such a metaphor. It was such a metaphor for what this has felt like. Just watching this man and this administration basically take a wrecking ball to democracy. And I mean, there are so many kind of metaphors here because normally any kind of structural change like that would go through congressional approval and oversight. There would be public review. And of course, this person just takes what they want with no consent. Same behavior over and over again. And no apology, no remorse, right? Just so it's there's a lot there. It's not just the destruction of a historic landmark. It's also then his supporters and how they respond. It's the whole thing, right? It's everything that gets wrapped up into it. It's the lack of transparency. And so I was writing about all that. And I want to say a few things at the top about that specifically, and then kind of talk about what I was referring to as the other algorithm, because I think that is part of what is so difficult for all of us here, is that we really are living in two separate realities. There are people who feel like I do, who are just heartbroken about everything that has happened since January, basically. And there are people who are thrilled. They think this is all great. And it is so mind-boggling and devastating to exist in that situation. So I want to talk about that too. But the first part of this is I just want to debunk some of what is happening. Because first of all, I think it was back in July, the president was saying this ballroom is not going to touch the White House. It's going to be near it, but it's not going to touch it. So obviously that's not what happened. But that is what he said initially. And for people who are saying lots of presidents have made changes, and they'll start talking about Truman. Okay, that's the big one. And then they post pictures. Yeah. In 1948, what happened is the White House was falling apart. There was structural decay that was so intense, a federal inspector came and said the White House was standing by force of habit only. They were really worried about safety and that the entire thing might collapse. And it needed to be rebuilt from the ground up because it would have collapsed. So at that point, Truman and family moved across the street to the Blair House, Congress approved this whole rebuild, and they rebuilt the White House. That's what you're looking at when you see these pictures. It was not that Truman came in and said, oh, I don't like it. It's not good enough for me. I want to knock the whole thing down and start over. That's not what happened. Truman came in and there was really serious concern about anybody being in that structure any longer. That's what occurred. So just to be really clear on that. And yeah, there have been updates along the way. The bowling alley that was added, Gerald Ford swimming pool, nothing like what we are seeing right now. And anything that has ever been changed has been done with congressional approval, federal funds, and that's very important. I'll get to that, and public review. So, couple things. This is federally owned property. It is run by the National Park Service and maintained by our tax dollars. This is why it is called the People's House. It's our house, and the presidents come and go. They are temporary tenants. They come, they go. They are not allowed to willy-nilly come in there and start knocking down walls. That's not how it works. Not only that, there have always been very, very strict rules about even paint. And I linked in the essay a very fascinating article that I found in House Digest. I don't think a lot of journalists are probably searching House Digest, but it was fascinating because, and I really suggest you go look at that, because when the first family moves in, they're allowed to make updates to the residents. They're going to live there for 4 years at least, maybe 8. So they're allowed to, to be comfortable as the president is serving the country for 4 years. That's how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be serving the country and not himself and his billionaire friends. But I'll get back to that too. And so, you want people to feel comfortable where they're going to live for 4 years. And especially, people like that are moving in with their families, you want people to feel comfortable. So they're allowed to make changes to the residence, which are the second and third floors, right? But even those are very strict, like what they're allowed to change or not change. The floors that are not located on the second and third levels they have never been touched. The Oval Office, the Lincoln Room, like there's very strict. They're allowed to do things like there's a White House warehouse, the location of which is hidden. And that warehouse stores all of the furniture and artwork collected by prior presidents. And so the first family can go there and kind of look through. And if they want to, I want like whatever, I really want this dresser that belonged to Eleanor Roosevelt in my room or whatever. They can swap things out. They can swap out artwork. They can request artwork if they want to, from a museum. If a museum wants to lend the current tenant of the Oval Office artwork, that can happen. But they can't just come in and do whatever they want because it is a historical landmark. It is not just to this country, but it's it's an important building, right? And, okay. I started seeing people comparing. It is amazing. I can barely get these words out without laughing. People are talking about Obama added a basketball court. Meanwhile, you're like looking at the entire East Wing just being destroyed, right? Just like gaping holes and wrecking balls and drywall flying. And people are talking about a basketball court. Obama took the existing White House tennis court and asked if it could be turned into a court where you could also play basketball, which involved painting some lines and adding 2 hoops. You want to compare that to what we're looking at right now? Painting some lines on the floor that already existed and adding 2 hoops. It's like, and he did that with congressional approval and oversight and public review. He didn't just go ahead and do it. That tiny little thing. It's like, please, it is literally, I wrote in the essay, it's like comparing an ant to an asteroid. It's a joke. Like people should just, it's embarrassing for you to make that comparison. You should just stop. Like don't, really don't. Like if you want to, just drop that one. The Truman thing is also, you're embarrassing yourself. It's go fact check me. So you understand what you're talking about, because it's embarrassing for you to use those as like some kind of, justification for what's happened. There is no justification for what's happening. It should not have happened like this, and it shouldn't be happening. This is it's just unbelievable. There are ways, if he wanted to add a ballroom, where it could have gone through a process and people wouldn't be feeling the way that they're feeling about it. But this person does not care about rules, laws, Congress, the Constitution, or half the American people. He just doesn't care. And the other half of the American people who voted for him don't care about the people who didn't vote. So it's, it's a problem. Okay. The other thing about the Obamas, just to like fully close that topic for you, is, well, there are a few things. The first family, when they move into the White House, they are allotted $100,000. That's everybody, every first family, of taxpayer money to make whatever changes they want to make to the residence. The Obamas did not want to spend any taxpayer money making changes to the residence, so they declined that money and made whatever changes they wanted to make with their own money. Okay? I'm not sure any other first family has ever done that. And Michelle Obama planted the White House kitchen garden. And that garden continues to supply the White House with 2,000 pounds of produce a year. So in other words, she created something that continues to produce, leaving a place better than you found it, not destroying it. And again, all these things done with congressional approval and oversight. So I don't really think you're going to win if you start pointing to the Obamas. I think you just stop that. That's just a bad move. You just want to stop that. The other piece of misinformation that is being, oh my God, there's so much that it's that flooding the zone thing, is this. There was a $372 million renovation that happened when Obama was in office. Yeah, that's true. It was approved during the Bush administration in 2008, during Bush, before Obama took office, during Bush's Congress. The Bush administration did a report, and the report came back while Bush was still president. He is the one, it was his administration that did this report about infrastructure that was failing in the White House. Things like, the heating system, the HVAC, all that stuff, failing regularly, and other systems. And during the Bush administration, they went to Congress and said, there's a lot of things here that need to be updated for security, different security systems that were failing continually. And the Bush administration and that Congress approved the $372 million renovation that needed to happen to those systems in 2008 before Obama took office. So yes, that renovation happened while he was there. He didn't approve it. It's not his. It's just disgusting, is really the thing. And again, please fact check me. I beg you, please. I'm just so tired of the lies. I'm so tired of the bold-faced, smug, gleeful, up yours attitude when it's not true. It's just like, it's so exhausting to have people just smugly like, oh yeah, well, how about this? And then they're throwing things at you that are just blatantly not true. And, there's a part of me, if it wasn't so constant, right, where I'm like, I could feel bad because they're getting this bad information from the top, from people like Mike Johnson, who he knows he's lying. Believe me, he's very aware of who approved those funds and what happened. He knows what he's doing. Just like he knows he's lying when he says Chuck Schumer's the reason the government's not open. He's the reason the government's not open. Mike Johnson's the Speaker of the House. The Republicans are controlling the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. This is not hard. It's not hard, If he wanted to reopen, he could. If he wanted to say to Republican senators, come to work and start negotiating with your colleagues and let's get this done, he could do it right now, right this second. He doesn't want to. And what's really interesting is while he is continuing to keep the House, to keep it, no sessions, to keep everybody home, there are no oversight committees right now. There is no, oversight committee right now that could be saying like, hey, wait a second, this wrecking ball thing that's going on in the East Wing, like that's not okay. They're not in session. Coincidence? Yeah, I doubt it. And then the other thing that is amazing is his supporters are like, well, he's paying for it himself. What are you so upset about? First of all, that doesn't even matter. It's not true. But aside from all that, everything I just said is already devastating and not okay. Period. And go and look at some of the things that are being posted and the history this person just, demolished without a thought and without permission. It's not his house. He doesn't own that property. We do. Please understand, if you voted for him, maybe this is okay with you. It's not okay with everyone. So, you may not care how other people feel, but whether you care or not, it's still not okay. Do you understand? It doesn't matter whether you care. It matters that it's not okay. And it also isn't legal. This is not the legal process. So, you may say, well, up yours, I don't care. It's still illegal. The law doesn't care if you care or not. The law doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't matter. B, you don't want this cloak and daggers, private donations, me and my friends and I are going to pay for this. First of all, he's not paying for it. He started talking about private donations quite a while ago. And that's called pay to play. That's also illegal. You don't want that. When you make changes to the White House, you want federal funds being used. You don't want to owe anyone anything. The people who are paying for this are huge corporations. Huge corporations. Like YouTube got sued because, and we're going to get back to lawsuits, after January 6th, when he incited an insurrection at the Capitol and people attacked, and I hope we all remember January 6th with the noose and hang Mike Pence and, Capitol Police being beaten and DC Metro Police being beaten, Michael Fanone and almost beaten within an inch of his life, and police officers being sprayed with bear spray and beaten with flagpoles, and windows being broken, doors being beaten in. I mean, people on the Senate floor defecating and spreading their feces on the walls, people running through the halls saying, hunting for Nancy Pelosi. And the left are the violent lunatics, right? And the first day in office, this president pardons everybody. And a lot of those people have gone on to commit horrifying crimes, some against children. And one of those people just threatened to assassinate Hakeem Jeffries. But this is the party that is worried about crime on the streets. Anyway, YouTube suspended his account at the time. And he is, now that he's back as, president again, he's sued them. And as part of they bent the knee, YouTube. And as part of their settlement deal, because now he's got all the regulatory bodies under his thumb. That's also part of what has happened since he took over. All these regulatory commissions, the FCC, they used to be independent regulatory commissions for a reason, so they could keep a check on things. And now they're under his thumb and being weaponized. And so YouTube bent the knee, and as part of their settlement, they're donating $22 million to the ballroom. Amazon is donating, Google, Microsoft, Lockheed Martin, OpenAI, Meta. This is off the top of my head. A lot of different people, families. Yeah, there's a list. It's linked in my essay. There is a long list. Carrier is donating the heating, air conditioning system. More of them will come back to me. There's a very long list of corporations donating millions and millions of dollars, Apple, to this ballroom. And if you think they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, you're crazy. They're doing it because they want stuff in return. That is called pay to play. We don't want that. That's corrupt. That's not what we want. So to be saying to yourself, oh, he and his friends are paying for it. What are you upset about? Yeah, it's upsetting. It's not good. Look up pay to play politics and you'll understand. We don't allow that. That's bribery. I'm going to give you a giant $1 million donation, and I'm going to expect that you're going to let me do what I need to do to run my business. I'm going to get my giant tax break as a billionaire corporation. I'm going to get to put rockets in the sky, Elon Musk. I'm going to get to do what I need to do because I'm giving you money. You don't want that. We don't want that. That's not a good thing. B, I brought up January 6th. This man has been suing the DOJ for investigating him for January 6th and for Russian election interference in 2016. He is suing the DOJ for doing its job. When things like this happen, for example, like January 6th, we have never, ever in our country's history had a situation where we have a free and fair election and there's not a peaceful transfer of power until January 6th. And I don't know what people needed to see. I really don't, because that was, I just still, I can remember sitting down and just thinking, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. And this president, it's all on record. He called George, he's telling the Raffensperger, he's telling him to, find votes that didn't exist. That's the election fraud. That's the election fraud. For 187 minutes, while people their lives are in jeopardy, he did nothing. He did nothing. And so, there's going to be an investigation, as there should be. And this man now sues for, a violation of his right to privacy. That's what he's suing for, $230 million. And now he is the president again. And guess who gets to decide whether he should get a payout? The DOJ that he now runs, that is led by people he has appointed who used to be his attorneys. Oh, what do you think is going to happen? And he's decided he's the one who gets to figure out whether he deserves the payout or not. We already know that he believes he does. So that is taxpayer money. That's $230 million of taxpayer money. And he's like, oh, don't worry. When I decide to award that to myself, I'll use it for charity, or maybe I'll use it for the ballroom. Charity, yeah. He's going to take $230 million of taxpayer money when we're in a shutdown. First of all, this is unheard of. Like, for a president to sue the Department of Justice for doing its job and investigating a man who did incite an insurrection. That did happen. Yeah, like I don't know. I have no word. Like I don't have words. It's like the level of narcissism and gaslighting is so intense. I just don't, I don't have words. But that's money that is our money that he now wants to take during a shutdown, no less. SNAP benefits are canceled for November 1st unless they do something, which it sure doesn't look like they're going to. Do you know how many people rely on SNAP benefits in order to eat? And if you have no empathy for that, I really don't know what to say. That's I don't know. Something's going really wrong for you. It's a failure to understand that it's not a level playing field for everyone. And, we've set up a system that is, it's mostly in red states too, by the way. The people who are going to be impacted the hardest by a lack of SNAP benefits, mostly in red states. Children, elderly people, people who are uniquely abled, people who cannot just get to the grocery store by themselves. Like, it's really disgusting to, target the most vulnerable people in our society and be like, yeah, you don't get to eat. But this man is going to sue the Department of Justice for $230 million and take that taxpayer money. And also tell the Speaker of the House to keep all the Republican senators home, to keep the House out of session. We've never had this before, by the way. This is the longest shutdown, and with nobody there trying to negotiate to reopen. Please understand that. He is the Speaker of the House, and he keeps telling Republican senators not to come in. And the only thing that he will accept is for Democrats to sign a clean CR, which they did in March. They signed a clean CR in March to keep the government open and hoped to be able to negotiate with their Republican colleagues on a budget bill that everybody could live with. And we got that big, ugly bill, in July. And that bill, there is nothing in it for people to have affordable health care. There's nothing in it. They did not extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. They gutted $1.3 trillion out of Medicaid over the next 10 years. They canceled SNAP benefits. And they keep telling you this lie, all of us, but half of us know it's a lie, that Democrats are not are not opening the government as if Democrats have the power. Okay. Again, Republicans, do you not realize he won the election supposedly? I really I would never have been somebody. I wasn't going to be that person. And now I'm like, these people will cheat. They'll do whatever. They're trying to redraw maps. They're, they're knocking down the White House without any whatever, like they have no qualms about cheating or whatever. So whatever. Anyway, he's in there. And where was I? I don't even know where I was anymore. I'm like, that Democrats are keeping the government closed because they are insisting on having beautiful health care for undocumented immigrants. That is a bold-faced lie. I hope you hear me. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for federally funded health care. Full stop. They are not eligible for ACA benefits, Affordable Care Act benefits, Medicare or Medicaid. They are not eligible for Social Security. They are not. They pay taxes. They are not eligible for those benefits. What they get is through EMTALA, through emergency, if they go to the emergency room because they get hit by a car or they're working on whatever, a construction site or something, some crazy, a tree fall, some emergency thing happens, they can go to the emergency room and get emergency care, just like you can or I can if we're traveling abroad and an emergency happens and we go to the emergency room. Yeah, I would certainly hope so. I would certainly hope there's no one listening to this saying, well, I don't like that, because then I don't know what to say to you. Like, you have a problem. Because I'm sure when you're traveling abroad, if you have an emergency and you go to the emergency room, you'd like to receive emergency care. So that's what happens here too. That is the only healthcare undocumented immigrants are able to receive federally. And no one is trying to change that. If a state decides to extend further health care from their state budget because they can afford to and because they want to, that's up to the states. But as far as federally funded health care, absolutely not. And that is not what is happening. The only thing Democrats are asking for right now is an extension of the ACA subsidies so that Americans can have affordable health care and some kind of redistribution of that budget, which billions of dollars going to ICE. Let's take a little of that back for Medicaid. Since you gutted $1.3 trillion from Medicaid over the next 10 years, let's take a little of that back or something. Let's have a conversation about where we can take a little money back for Medicaid because people are going to die. People are going to die. That's why. And SNAP benefits. Let's not have people die. That's what they're asking for. And Mike Johnson's like, do not give that to them. You're staying home. We're not having that conversation. You're not even going to go in and have a conversation. It's like, and listen, Republicans are impacted by this. So more than Democrats, more so. Please, you're going to anyway. If you haven't already, this is the time of year. This is when you should start hopefully already looking in your portals and having conversations with your health insurance. If you get it through your employer, well, then you're lucky. But there are millions and millions of, they're saying 20 million people are not going to be able to afford health insurance come January if they don't negotiate here, and it's like 10 years, by the way. You can look at this, that Republicans have been trying to repeal Obamacare, repeal the ACA. I think it's like 72 times they've tried to repeal it. Is it perfect? No, of course not. It's not. People like me, it's like I am pro universal health care. I feel like we could easily figure this out. I think we could figure it out where we have universal health care, and if people want to pay for private insurance, they can. I am sure we could figure it out because we're smart. That's what I think. I think you should have universal health care. I do not think it should be a luxury item. Like every other developed country, Canada and Argentina, who we bailed out for $40 billion. They have free health care. Isn't that interesting? We gave them $40 billion, but their citizens have free health care, and it's good. It's good health care. Guess what? Our federal workers have health care. These people like Mike Johnson, they've got health care. They have really good health care, but they're not worried about us having it. So personally, if I were someone who had voted for these people, I would be furious right now. I'd be furious. And Argentina, now the president, whatever that deal is, he likes them. He thinks they're nice. That's why he gave them 40 billion of our dollars, because he likes them. Does that make sense to you? Really, I'm curious. Does that make sense to you? He gave $40 billion to Argentina because he likes them and they're nice. I really hope that doesn't make sense to you. But people here can't eat, don't have health care. I thought it was America first. Yeah, it doesn't really add up, does it? The math is not, it's not really mathing. He's also importing beef from Argentina. And our cattle farmers here are like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And he's like, well, if you want to compete, lower your prices. So now these cattle farmers who are barely surviving are like being screwed by the person that most of them voted for. Let's be real. And now he's underselling them with some weird deal with Argentina. Y'all, this is not a good person. I don't know why it's not obvious to everyone, but it's not at all. So that's the other part of this. Oh, and CBS News is reporting that part of this, ballroom, $300 million, also like $300 million for a ballroom. Does that really make sense to anyone? Why don't you talk to some contractors about, I don't care how big it is, the HVAC system is being donated. Even if you used like the most beautiful everything, $300 million. CBS News is reporting that he's updating the bunker underneath the ballroom. So anyway, I don't know, but that seems likely. It seems likely to me, because I don't know how you even spend $300 million on a big square room, no matter how pretty it is. Oh, it's exhausting. What happens sometimes is I really do try to understand how this can be happening, right? Like how people can't be, even the people who voted for him, it can't be like, okay, wait a second, this is really bad. Like, this is not, I didn't vote for this. This is not okay. I mean, I'm not okay with a president even who's like, just all of it, I mean, it breaks my heart. ICE is in New York City now, and I have a close friend who just, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, a bunch of nannies were grabbed right before pickup from a nursery school on the Upper West Side of New York City. Like nannies, before pickup. They did not get to pick up the kids. These are the hardened criminals people are worried about, really. This is the worst of the worst. These nannies. It's just like, and they're treated so violently. It's like, I just don't understand what is going on, even with the people who voted for this. And what happens is I expect to see some compassionate comments in places sometimes, or even with the White House thing. Some people are devastated about that, and other people are like, that house was built, through forced labor of enslaved people, and I'm not going to be heartbroken about that. I'm worried about people being disappeared off the streets. Totally respect that. My bigger issue here is the man inside that house who's wrecking it wants to wipe that part of history from the record. He wants to, this is a man who's replacing PBS with PragerU and teaching kids that slavery wasn't that bad. He's got this PragerU has all these animated videos that are going out into the public school system currently now, teaching kids to animated Christopher Columbus, okay, who was a dreadful human being, abusive, horrible person. Even though I know we were taught he was wonderful, terrible human being, documented. You can just look it up while you still can, while this information still exists. And animated Christopher Columbus is teaching kids that they should consider slavery in the context in which it existed. And, it's better than being dead, no? It is so offensive. I don't know it's terrifying, because he doesn't want little white kids to he doesn't want them to feel bad about themselves or bad about the country. This is not what you do. I learned about slavery as a little white kid, and it made me feel horrible. It did. It made me feel awful, uncomfortable, confused, yeah. And that was really, really good for me, because it taught me, I started to want to understand, wait, what happened? Manifest destiny was taught as this thing that, God told, okay, we're supposed to come and do this because God said wait a second, what? Wow, that seems pretty convenient. It's good to understand the history of a country, your country, and reckon with that and understand it's good. It's good for you. It's good for you as a human being, especially when you are, a white person who has privilege. It's really good to understand what the history is and to honestly look at it, to really see what happened, so that you can gain empathy and work hard, not just for yourself to be aware, right? When you walk into a space, when you move through the world, when you think about how things must feel for other people, but also so that you can try to figure out, how can I move this needle forward so this world that we're in becomes a better place? What can I do? I'm just one person, I know, but what can I do to make the world a better place? While I'm here, how can I keep moving us on a forward on a better trajectory here. It's good for people to understand what has happened behind them so they don't repeat the same mistakes as they move forward. And not only that, it's like for me and for a lot of people I know, you then develop this desire to really understand and to start reading writers like, Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison and James Baldwin. You want to like understand other people's perspectives, and it makes you a better person. It makes you a better human being. So denying kids that discomfort is denying them an opportunity to be better people. It's not good for them, and it's not good for us as a country. And kids can handle it. It's okay. They can handle it. It's just, I don't know. It is so devastating to see all these people who like want to move backward, like they don't want to take this in. They don't want to do that work. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. They don't like that. I don't like the way that feels. I'm not racist. Like, don't lump me in with everyone. Listen, why don't you, if you're that triggered, why don't you breathe? Just breathe and like figure out why you're so triggered. If you're not racist, then you're not going to be triggered. You're not. You're not going to be bothered. You're going to be like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. I understand why that feeling is prevalent, and I'm not taking it personally. And if anything, it inspires me to work harder. I don't need any acknowledgement. I just like, if you are getting caught up in that, then your quote unquote allyship is for you. It's like, you're still not doing it. I'm just talking now, as a white woman to other white women and other white people. If you get yourself worked up because you're reading something or, you're in a group and you're hearing and you feel uncomfortable, you don't like that. Well, don't group me in with that. That's the same thing. If a woman posts something about something that happened with a guy or whatever, and then you start hearing in the not all men, you're that. That's who you are then. That's what you're doing. In that moment, if you feel the need, that's who you are. Just freaking stop. Just stop. Learn, be quiet, try to do better. Please. But this guy and people who think like him, they think if we teach kids about this stuff, well, this is what they're saying, they're going to hate their country. I don't hate my country. I love my country. I love my country, and I can recognize all the work that still needed to be done. Now I'm saying needed in the past because I see we're going in the absolute wrong direction. I felt like it was slow moving, but at least there was like movement. I mean, I think Citizens United, when we made corporations like people, it was a real moment where it's just a huge capitulation to capitalism and to selling our souls and to deciding like money's the most important thing. And it's a big problem here. Like, it's like I'm not I have no problem with people working hard. I don't, I'm not like somebody's, we should all, I'm not, I think when you don't teach empathy along with, working hard, you're screwed. This whole sort of survival of the fittest thing, which is, Darwin really said the most adaptable people are the ones who survive. But I think all of what we were taught was very much like, look out for number one, that kind of thing. And that has never appealed to me as a person. I'm just not that person, you know? But I have no problem with people working hard and making money, and that's okay. That's great. Enjoy. However, if you do really well, you should give back. You should certainly pay the proper amount of taxes. If millionaires and billionaires were paying what they should, we would not be in this situation at all. So, you know, you have to be reasonable, and people are not reasonable here. It's like some crazy number, some small number of people have like 90% of the wealth. It's absolute madness here. And it does not trickle down. The hatred trickles down. And that's what I was starting to say, is that, you know, I start to despair because I see like, okay, the White House is getting demolished. And I think, well, surely there are going to be people who voted for him who are not okay with this, right? Like, not that, again, there's so many things to not be okay with. And I think this every day. Every day I'm like, okay, well, surely like this ICE agent throwing this young mother across the floor in front of her tiny children is not going to be okay. And people are like, they should have come here the right way. You know, they did, actually. They did. She had all the paperwork and everything in order. And in that instance that I'm talking about from Ecuador, they did. They came the right way. It's just so disheartening. So, you know, or you see like ICE agents shooting a minister in the head with a pepper bullet or three, and you think, well, surely somebody will. No, quiet, nothing from the people who voted for this. You know, I saw in Portland, there was a blind man who was protesting, and I see he'd come a couple of times to one of the detention centers in Portland. And one of the times he came, he was blocking a driveway, but he didn't realize he was with a bunch of other protesters, and he got arrested. The next time he came, he was carefully not in the driveway, sitting and exercising his First Amendment rights, yelling things as these guys walked by that they did not like. They violently picked this man up. I thought I was going to throw up. Like, it was so horrifying. It's a blind man. That's an American citizen exercising his First Amendment rights, and these guys brutalized him. You know, we're just seeing things every day, and you think, well, somebody's going to, no. Supporters, they're either quiet, they go silent, or they back them up. But I do not see people saying, this is not okay with me. I don't see it. I hope it's there. And and they're quietly calling their representatives, but they're not saying it anywhere that I can see it. And this week, the ballroom stuff, right? Which is, there's so many things. That's what I was seeing. People talking about the tennis court, and the basketball court, that like Truman. Someone said to me, "Oh, I'm sure if he put a lot of gender neutral bathrooms in this ballroom, then you'd be fine." Like, dude, you know what? Honestly, like, I want to say a lot of expletives right now. Just go away. Like, what's wrong with you? Honestly, what is wrong with you? Why are you so angry and hateful? Seriously. Like, what happened to you to make you this hateful? I said, white man in this country, straight white man, you're fine. You get nothing. You can walk in anywhere and you are okay. What's your problem? What are you so angry about? It's just, and your guy won, and he's out there doing horrific things to like everyone, and posting AI videos, dumping crap on people like me. Why are you still so angry? Like, what is going on? But you start to see things. Because I have this, maybe it's my personality, I don't know. But I really want to understand, right? I'm like, why are people not like getting it yet? Why are they not looking in their portals, people who voted for this, and be like, oh, yeah, wow, yeah, that's not good. Yes, I want my senator to get back to work and start negotiating. Like, I'm not okay with that. Yeah, I'm not okay with Argentina getting $40 billion. Yeah, I'm not okay with Kristi Noem getting $173 million for 2 private jets that are like the most luxurious things I've ever seen. That happened. What, you all want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse? We got people who can't eat and Americans with no plan for affordable health care, but somehow Kristi Noem gets to spend $173 million on 2 private jets for Homeland Security. Why? Is that okay with you? I don't understand. So I keep looking, like I keep thinking, okay, they're certainly going to start questioning this stuff, but no. And on the other algorithm, which is what I was writing about, it's like an alternate reality where I go to visit because I'm trying to understand, right? I'm like, what are they seeing? What are they seeing, that makes them still think this is a good person? Like, I don't understand. On the other algorithm, they think this man, all the things that he says, they believe. He's solved 15 wars, he's done peace deals. He's 15 peace deals. And, oh my God, I'm trying to think. It's just so wild that, like authoritarianism was during the pandemic when people had to get the vaccinations or they couldn't go to work. That was authoritarianism, not people being disappeared off the streets, not having troops sent to Democrat-led states and cities, not having American citizens being, violently attacked by these people and having their First Amendment rights trampled upon, not shooting people out of international seas with no due process. None of that. That's not authoritarianism. A man just knocking down the White House, impounding funds that Congress has appropriated, firing federal workers, canceling, federal programs. That's not authoritarianism, no. When we went through the first global pandemic we'd ever lived through in our lifetimes, requiring that people who wanted to be in public spaces had to get a vaccination against a virus that was killing millions of people, that was authoritarianism. That's still very upsetting on the other algorithm. And also it didn't work. And yeah. And then somehow they forget that the president was like, when he came in, he was like the head of Operation Warp Speed with the vaccinations, which he likes still. It's so wild. It's like really hard to keep up with the thinking on it all. But that was authoritarianism. And also Kamala Harris was installed. So that was authoritarianism. But this isn't. Having troops come in isn't. And, like there's lawlessness on the streets, and too bad because we wanted closed borders, so deal with it. That's basically it. Oh my God. So, it's just really, for someone like me, it's very hard. And I was writing about this too, because I'm just going to take a little sip here. I feel like, you know, and I know this is a really tough issue for a lot of people. So I want to be sensitive. It's painful for me to talk about some of this, but um, I am someone who I think we overprescribe in this country. I think we treat the symptoms. I think there's a lot of stuff in our food that shouldn't be in our food. And I have always been someone who, like, I go out of my way to eat healthily. I don't eat meat. Like, I'm pretty healthy when it comes to that stuff, and I pay attention and I read labels, and I've always been like that. I was for a long time a very strict vegan. I am not anymore. I'm vegetarian, but whatever. And I also don't judge people. I do not. I think it's very personal what you put in your mouth. And my thing is, I just encourage people to educate themselves. If you do eat animals, to really educate yourself about where those animals are coming from, how they're being treated, and all of that. It's very hard right now because everything is really expensive. I understand that. So I don't judge people. I just don't do that. But I do encourage you to really educate yourself. And anything that you can do is positive. Meatless Mondays, I'm like, good, great, wonderful. For me personally, I just opt out of that because as much as I can, do not want to be part of a cycle of suffering for any sentient being. So as much as I can opt out, I do. Unfortunately, in the world we've created, you can't totally opt out. Unfortunately, it's just, I don't know how you can possibly do that in the world that we exist in. And be a law-abiding person at the same time and pay your taxes and stuff, because you pay taxes to a government that makes decisions. Anyway. So that's me. And I don't just blindly trust, I'm not like just this, big pharma. Oh yeah, here's my arm. Like, that's not me. That's never been me. When I had my babies, I was an attachment parenting, co-sleeping, baby wearing, breastfed both my kids I breastfed my son. He was 2.5 when I stopped breastfeeding. I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter. So I had a 3-month break. Then I had my daughter, and I breastfed her I could not get her off she was not, she was tough. She was harder than my son. So, I was breastfeeding her for like almost 3 years. I had to finally, get her off my boob. So I am not someone who's just like, oh yeah, hey, vaccine, bring it on. I'm careful. When my kids were little, I slowed the vaccination schedule way down. I read about every single thing, but I also know my history, and I read a lot about that. And I hope you read about polio and vaccine history as well. That's good history to know about, and how a lot of diseases that killed people don't exist anymore because of vaccines. For those of you who are really anti-vaccine, just kind of it's good if you haven't, to understand a disease. Polio is a good one to study, just to understand what happened there. Smallpox, just measles, all of it. We have measles again. We had pretty much eradicated measles here in 2000. We have had more cases this year than any year since 2000, when measles were eradicated. What has changed this year? I think you can figure it out. But on the other algorithm, what people want to say is we have measles again because of undocumented immigrants crossing the border. Y'all, that is so nasty. We have measles again because we have someone heading our Health and Human Services who doesn't believe in vaccines. That's why. And that is what's going on. Unfortunately, and it's really, really sad. We also have someone heading our Department of Health who, the guy who heads the Department of Health this week was talking about how babies grow inside the woman's placenta. He does not even know where babies grow, okay? I think he has like 6 kids, and he does not know where babies grow. Babies grow in the uterus. The placenta is an organ that grows inside the uterine lining as the baby grows. And that is what is providing nutrients and oxygen to the baby through the umbilical cord. I don't want a man who does not even know where the baby grows talking to me about things like this, okay? And do you know how many men, side note, are passing laws on women's bodies and they don't even know? I had someone during the pandemic text me and say, hey, just wanted to say, about the vaccines. I mean, I'm just worried about you and your daughter with the placenta and stuff. Okay. At the time that text came in, this was a family member of mine who was doing his own research on YouTube. I was 49. My daughter was 12, not pregnant. Therefore, no placenta. No placenta. A placenta is not floating around a woman's body. It only exists if the person is pregnant. So you have people talking to you about the vaccines and whether they're safe who don't understand what they're talking about, but they've done their own research. Okay. We had research on the mRNA vaccines for a decade before COVID-19. There were other coronaviruses, 50 other coronaviruses before COVID-19. So there was already information, there were studies for a decade on that vaccine and the viruses and how they worked. That is one of the reasons they were able to produce the vaccine so quickly. I dropped a bunch of links in the essay as well, but it doesn't matter because for people who have decided there were so many things that happened during the pandemic. I understand it was really horrible, and I'm going to tell you some things about my personal experience in a minute. People were not okay. It was painful. Believe me, I understand. We were all separated from each other and we're not built for that. And a lot of people really suffered. And I am aware of that. It was, it's very painful. A lot of people it was heartbreaking. And so I know, and people were online a lot. It was a lot of, first of all, Zoom school for all of our kids who were home. And that was rough on a lot of kids. And I'm not unaware, My kids were home. My son started high school from his bedroom. My daughter started middle school from hers. It was not easy, and I work from home, and it was full on. I'm trying to get my work done and be mom at the same time, and it was just a lot. It was a lot. And then as that was happening, my mother got diagnosed with ALS across the country. So she's in New York. I'm in Los Angeles, and, this diagnosis came out of nowhere, left field, and it was brutal, obviously. And I could not get on a plane to go and see her because of COVID. And I could not get on a plane and go and see her until I had a vaccination and everyone had a vaccination. I had to wait until my youngest daughter was vaccinated because I was very concerned about exposing my mother, whose throat muscles were collapsing. Unfortunately, that's one of the first things, not for everyone. ALS, it affects different people in different ways. But with my mother, hers started with her throat, with something called bulbar palsy. And by the time I saw her, I mean, I was obviously FaceTiming with her and Zooming with her and all of that. But by the time I saw her, it was August of, I'm trying to get the years right here. I think it was August of 21. I think that's right. And she was not, it was horrifying. It had really ravaged her. She was just down to bones. Like she couldn't swallow. She couldn't chew. She couldn't speak anymore. So she would use an app, and she would type into the app, and then this robotic voice would say whatever she had typed. She was just so frail. She was still, when I saw her in August, still able to, walk and dress herself and bathe and all of that. She was able to do those things, but it was extremely devastating to see her in person when I finally got to see her. And if you think that did not break my heart, of course it did. What ended up happening is a few months later, she woke up one morning and she was struggling to breathe, and she ended up in the ICU. And I flew across the country, as fast as I could, obviously 6 hours, whatever. And I ended up spending the last month of my mother's life in the ICU. This is the height of COVID, still really terrible. We're in November now. Everyone in the ICU around my mother is dying of COVID. Ventilators. My mother was on a ventilator for the ALS, and she also had pneumonia. Everyone on the floor is dying of COVID. That is who was in the ICU. I spent a month in the ICU with doctors, nurses, social workers, people who had been facing this for over a year at that point. And, when you're in a situation like that, there is no small talk. You end up crying with these people. They are watching you go through the worst imaginable thing. And you have no idea how grateful they were for the vaccines, because they were dealing with too many bodies, not enough space in the morgue, refrigerated vans, I don't know if you can really understand this unless you have either been in the ICU or you have a loved one who works in an ICU. But the level of gratitude that these people felt was so immense, because it slowed things down. It got things back to a place where they weren't just overwhelmed with people dying, just death, constant, not enough beds, not enough equipment, not enough masks, not enough ventilators. They weren't in that situation anymore because of the vaccines. So it is really hard for me to watch people not understand. I know it was difficult. I know it was painful. I was there. Still feel so angry, like their rights were violated because if they didn't get the shot, like they couldn't go. It's like you're in a, you're in a community. You're in a community, and if you wanted to opt out and stay home, you could. But if you want to come into work and be around other people, like, you do have to, at a certain point, understand this is like part of, what it is to be in community with other people. You have to do what is best for the greater good. And I know there's just this deep, deep distrust of big pharma. Totally agree. I'm not some big pharma is so trustworthy. I'm not that. But in this situation, yeah, like, it was a pandemic, like, really truly read about like prior pandemics that we've had. And if you don't want to do it anymore, if you want to opt out of the boosters or whatever, do your thing. But at that time, where people were absolutely dropping like flies, yes, that's what needed to happen. Was everything handled perfect? No, of course not. It wasn't. How could it have been? It wasn't handled perfectly. It was the first time we went through it. It's a whole country. It's, 340 million people here. Of course it wasn't handled perfectly. And I don't think it will be if it happens again, because we don't have, look at our government shut down, and we have this guy like who doesn't even know our anatomy and biology. If it happens now, people will just die. That's what will happen. We won't even know what's going on because all of our resources, everything's been gutted, and we won't even know. So it's very hard to check out that other, to have that described as authoritarianism, but not this, not your neighbors being disappeared off the streets and thrown into unmarked vans and denied due process. And, it's just, it is so really painful to watch and to, just, to exist in this situation right now. It's really hard. And I don't know how we are going to come back together when you have so much vitriol. I mean, you might notice as I'm speaking about this, I'm not name calling. I'm not insulting. I'm telling you what it feels like and how painful it is. I'm not calling people who feel differently, derogatory things. But that's not the case. That's not the case when you visit the other algorithm. It is so full of vitriol and disrespect and smug, disinformation. And it's tough. So, I really don't know what is going to happen here. I know that if the president keeps shooting people out of international waters, which is what he said he was going to do this morning, things are probably not going to go well for him because other countries are not going to put up with that. But no one here seems to stop him. So, maybe that'll stop this madness. I know like Canada is not taking any crap and I appreciate that. Like, way to go, Canada. Really, really appreciate it. They're not bowing down to this tariff madness. They're just going and making other trade deals with other countries, as of course they are. This is what's going to happen, if you're if you voted for this, just so you know, like, it's going to come to your doorstep eventually. Something's going to happen that you care about, one way or the other. So, we're never going to agree on everything. We're never going to agree on everything. But asking the general public to get vaccinated during a global pandemic is not authoritarianism. Please note, it happened everywhere. It happened all over the world, like everywhere, every country. Global, right? It was a global pandemic. So we couldn't travel. It was not just here. It was everywhere for a reason. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I love y'all. And if you need support, if you need help, you know where to find me. I don't know. I hope they don't knock down the whole White House. And I hope by the time I see you next week, like, more really insane things have not happened. But my faith that will be the case is pretty small. But please do keep taking care of yourself, and you know where to find me if you need a little, little love. All right.